What's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today is going to be a free masterclass regarding drums, but specifically I actually want to take a look at XO and why it is incredibly useful for me and why it might be useful for you. However, I don't expect people to go out and spend money. I bought this with my own money just in case if we know all that stuff, no sponsorships, blah, blah, blah. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of the drum demos before you get bored and click on another video, and then we're going to talk about some of them. Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. The first one was Addictive Drums, the second one was Superior Drummer 3, third was XO, 4 was Kick 2, and the fifth beat was drums made with Faceplant. Now the reason why I prepared this demo for you was because you can get good drums out of just about anything, well, just about anything, especially a kick and snare. It's literally just a sine wave and some noise. What does matter is the aspect of processing. So we will talk about some of these other comparisons and stuff, but what I want to take a look at with XO is really the interface and like just how sick this thing is, in case if this is the first review that you've been watching. It's currently on sale for $130. I don't have any affiliate links or whatever, so XO, you're welcome for some free, or XLN, you're welcome for some free advertising, but it's freaking sick, and I couldn't not review it because of how good it is. It's like cheat codes. So at a glance, you can set your folders, or you can set XO to look at anything that holds your sample packs, and it will automatically try to categorize every single sample that you have that's within a certain size into a drum category. So red is kicks, blue is snares, purple is toms, this is must be effects, pink also seems like effects, green is kind of like hats, yellow is some other kind of percussion, and orange is kind of like clicks and clonks and dupes. So I'm pretty sure that you can change the color coding and whatnot, but it does help quite a bit that you have the ability to kind of just scan around like that and then assign a sample via this. Something else that you can do is you can actually just set the thing to record and then be like, do this stuff, and you'll just get a bunch of random stuff that you can cut up later, but that's kind of, you know, maybe a tutorial for a different day. The other thing that's really sick about this, however, is that when you go into the Edit tab, you have a bunch of different transient shaping options, pitching, and whatnot. Unfortunately, you've only got a reverb and a delay, but you can turn up the level, turn the soft clip on, and then send these through all of these distortion and clipping types to make your drum sound really nice and big. Now, there was a couple of key features within XO, aside from the sample organization, that made me go, wow, I need to buy this. The first thing is actually the sequencer here, and this isn't anything that's necessarily totally unique, it's just that this works really well. But if you look over here on the right, you've got a swing and a nudge. So what that means is if you are doing some kind of groove or some kind of thing to where you're trying to come up with some cool percussion that's in the realm of halftime or swingy beats or something, then you can actually use that in order to get something pretty close to what it is that you're looking for. So I'll just pull up some of these that I've made and we can take a look and see if any of these are interesting. So that's actually really cool. It kind of goes along the same lines about having the swing and the nudging of pushing stuff late and early, and that's honestly the trick of how you get interesting rhythm and percussion. Now the other cool thing is that not only can you randomize a bunch of stuff, but if you want an entirely new kit, you just go like this, and suddenly we've got a new kit. If you want to go back and to the one that you previously had, you can just click back, or you can just hit this a bunch of times until you find something interesting. And I guarantee at some point, if you have enough samples in this, you will find something that is interesting. Now, you've also got something called a beat combiner, and you can see that all of these have little steps recorded onto them. So if you want to try different things, this is the original beat that we made, but you can also switch between these for different variations. Or if you want to randomize, you just click random and it will hit there and that way. Now, at first, I was actually kind of disappointed because when I hit this, you can see that it didn't actually randomize things. It just made a choice between all of these. But in the same light, if you go to the sample combiner and randomize your kit, it will actually change where the steps are for you on their own. So let's just try to see if we can study this one for a second. I'm going to hit no, and then we're going to randomize that again. And let's see if that beat combiner is any different. And you can see that all of these are actually different. So yes, you can randomize your beats and stuff. It's just kind of weird how that works. Now, the other thing that is really neat is you can actually filter what, I guess, folders you're trying to look at. Now, sometimes you might want to only focus on like one specific sample pack or something, and you can definitely do that. But you can see that it's the core content and then the sample pack. And then if I'm doing something for maybe one of my expansions, like the Alckemy expansion that I just released, then I can find different drum kits like this and come up with cool and swingy beats. And it's just incredibly easy to use in that way. So there's more to this too. This is incredibly easy to export in a lot of different ways. So for one, you can do either raw or processed. You can render the waves if you want. You can pull out the entire raw process kit like this with all of the samples individually. You can do this with all of the effects. You can pull out all the stems. You can pull out the entire wave, or you can pull out the MIDI. And this is amazing because this helps me make my MIDI packs or some like MIDI files that I'll be working on in the future. You can normalize everything to relative or max, and then you can send them to a new export folder in order to create all of your drum needs and desires. So this is an incredible tool that I think that a lot of people will get into, because for me, this isn't even so much about like, it needs to be the end all be all drum. I'm going to make my kick and snare and I'm going to use that in my tune. I actually don't think of it like that at all. What I use this for is to sketch some kind of drum beat, say like so. Then what I would do is come out of this and pull this into the wave. And once I have this and it's all synced up and stuff, that's when I would get into that same idea that I talk about all the time if you've been watching my master classes for the Arcana members, of changing this into repitch mode and pushing and pulling this to find other different grooves and rhythms with that. And so when you get into this idea about approaching this generative, almost randomized pattern making and stuff, the speed at which you work to get these kinds of, I guess, like the vibe or the essence of these genres that you're trying to do comes incredibly fast. And then what's even more so is that you can save all of these with your MIDI patterns, with your swing things. You can change the kit, come back to it, and it starts to work for you. So that's why this is incredibly, like, I call it cheat codes, because there's just so much stuff that you can do with this. I didn't really talk about the Accentuator, although you can just turn it on and then have cool different rhythms accentuate and whatnot. You've got two different pattern types. So you've got off, A, B, A, B, and then you can flip that over. I don't really know why it's only these two. It would be cool if maybe there was some kind of sequencer blockchain, or I don't know, something like that, to where you can go like, well, what if I want to go BA or AAB, or what if I want to start on B? So that's fine. But even still, between everything that you have, even the sample editor, which is not the most robust, but still helps you kind of mangle the sample a bit, this is insane. Everybody should own this if you make electronic music, because it will do you so many favors. That being said, it's really important to take a look at the bigger picture of things and understand what it is not the best at, and also what you can do without it, right? So for one, I kind of wanted to discuss the other aspect of drum and bass and neurofunk, which is the infamous Addictive Drums 2 and Superior Drummer 3. And the difference between something like XO and Superior Drummer 3 is that these are actually focused on live acoustic kits. So you can actually import your own samples into a lot of these. So if you go to the drums, and you go here, then you can actually add an instrument or import an audio file, which works really well. There's also dedicated mixers, trackers, to where you can pull in grooves and whatnot. And this is kind of like your end all be all for your acoustic kits. The reason why it doesn't matter though, like let's say you've already bought Superior Drummer 3 and you've got XO, is that once you have it into this loop, kind of like what we talked about, everything goes into that same processing chain of pitching and resampling and cutting it up, and then having clean fundamentals with the rest of your drums, which leads me to talk about the other idea about why you might want to consider something like this, is that this, by nature, the XO, more so than the other two, but XO specifically, is not necessarily like, it's not a synthesizer. So it doesn't synthesize drums for you. It just helps you transform drum samples or samples in general into something different. So that's why I wanted to pull up the idea about having something like either Phase Plant or Kick 2. I'd recommend phase plant over kick 2 any day, but but even still, you can get some decent results with some outside processing. I would recommend phase plant for creating your fundamentals if you're into making electronic music, or if you want to create your fundamentals with Addictive Drums or Superior Drummer 3. I actually don't think that this kick is that bad. It's decent, but you can use that kind of tool instead in order to get whatever it is that you need. Now, the overall thing within these drums that you'll notice if I look on the effect processing chain is there are a couple of things that actually make this work. And this guy is actually not one of them. This is actually how I monitor loudness for the drums. So if you have FabFilter Pro L2, even though this is being clipped to 0, let me make sure that I'm on the correct chain here. You can see that this is at 0 dB. This actually is not a true representation about what the volume is that you're looking at or what the gain is. If you look over here, you'll see that this actually changes and measures this in LUFS. And that even though this is being clipped to 0, you can still actually make this louder. So again, that says that this is at 0, right? That was just playing. So that's something that can help you measure your true peak volume or your true momentary volume via LUFS to figure out how loud this stuff is. And if you're having trouble mixing your drums from blowing them up too much, like let's say, your snare seems louder than your kick, then you can use a tool like that, or maybe a LUF meter to kind of level those out to be relatively the same. For example, this kick here should be hitting somewhere around -9, -10. So the loudest it gets was that, -9 right there. And then if we take a look at the snare, we've got another one here as well. Let's just solo this. That's also -9.3. So this will help you kind of level things out. And of course you have to use your ears, but that's one trick that I think is incredibly important. Even still though, on the outside of processing and whatnot, before I go on too far, saturation and a hint of compression, and that's really all you need to make any of these drums smack in the way that you want them to feel fully fleshed out within a track. And this is mostly for fundamentals and stuff. When you're talking about layering breaks and whatever within your tunes, for me, I would still want some kind of fundamentals. So that's why you want to be mindful about these tools or whatever that you bust into, or you could just get a sample pack or something and use like one clean transient of a kick and snare, and then kind of have a heyday with any of these choices. But something that is interesting between most of these, I would say Addictive Drums, Superior Drummer, and XO, because kick is just a kick maker. That's all it really does. You can also make snares with it, but it's not very good, because it's not that it's not good, it's just limited, because you've got one instance of an EQ, a distortion, a compressor, and then some FM capabilities, and then some top end samples, and that's pretty much it. Get phase plant. Kick 2 is great for beginners, but unless if you're doing just like straight up techno or something, phase plant will make much better kicks for you. So these three though have different sequencers in them and also different effect processing that you might want to consider between one or the other outside of just acoustic samples. If we take a look at Addictive Drums, then you can see that every track has the same kind of layout of noise, compression and distortion, EQ, transient shaping, and then you've got some sends here that has a delay and reverb in between the two. And so this is very basic, but the advantage of Addictive Drums is that they actually sound really good without the post-processing. So if we were to take a listen to this, it is more quiet, of course, but and so with Addictive Drums, you don't have nearly as many kits, you don't have nearly as many choices as you do compared to Superior Drummer. However, there's so much, it's so easy to get up and going within this that you don't have to put hardly any effort into doing this. You kind of just, get a feel for all of these effects that you have right in front of you, and then your kit is done, and then you get into doing the outside processing in general. Now, Superior Drummer is kind of like this on steroids, except that it's really quiet. And the problem with it being super quiet is that sometimes it's hard to tell what you're doing. By the way, one other cool trick that you can do, I guess this is kind of like a hodgepodge of tutorial stuff, or regarding drums, but is that if you click on this right here, you can see that this has multiple outputs. So if you're trying to do like your kicks, your snares through 3 and 4, all that, and then process everything without having to do like complex routing. This is a really easy way to get into that, and I'm pretty sure that Addictive Drums has that as well. And then I think EXO also has that. They do. So this little guy right here is your best friend if you like doing things that way. I typically don't. I just process the entire drum kit all at once. Just makes things a little bit easier. So anyways, let's take a listen to Superior Drummer 3, and we can kind of just see what's going on there. So this actually has effects on it, and not many, but you can hear that even without these, it gets really quiet, and that's because this is gain stage on its own, so you have to put a lot more work into getting these to sound nice and full. But the payoff is that once you kind of wrap your head around regular drum processing in general, again, saturation and clipping and glue compression, maybe a touch of EQ, no, there's no EQ on this, then you can actually transform this into sounding much more full. I'd actually argue that the kick is a little bit too boomy, but I'd probably be taking the low end and replacing it with a kick like this anyways. So yeah, in essence, you kind of just want to be mindful about what kind of drums you think that you're going to need. If you're a beginner, I wouldn't buy any of these, to be honest. I would just use like your own, like I would use Operator or something, or FM4 to make your kicks and snares, or just use some very basic thing. It's not until you're really starting to pull for an aesthetic, or you really want to do generative things that are going to, how do I say, really help you decide about what you want, right? And this is also like discarding the price idea, because Addictive Drums versus Superior Drummer 3 versus EXO are in completely different price ranges. Faceplant as well if you get the entire thing. But this is all coming from somebody that has spent countless hours designing drums of all different kinds. And I imagine most people that watch this are not going to kind of have the time put into that. If you do, then you probably already know about these anyway, so there's that. The last thing that I kind of wanted to mention with this is that there's a lot of sequencing options. I think I was going to cover that before, and then I got sidetracked, so I apologize. Subscribe for not knowing where I am and forgetting my place. But the cool thing about this is that these all have different approaches to sequencing or to coming up with beats. So for example, this has just a huge list of different beats that you can kind of scroll through. And then there are these variations that you have. So if you click on swing beat 11, you've got all of these. And then what's also cool between this, which is why I actually pulled out this guy, that sounds really cool. You can actually change the accents behind this via the 8th notes and the 16th notes, and you can also adjust the timing of this. And it's very small, like very subtle, and that's why I'm zooming in, but you can see that this will kind of adjust the groove accents of that. Now the problem with this in particular though is that it doesn't really do a whole lot for you for like nudging forward or backward. This looks more so like velocity. This is your timing and stuff, but it doesn't actually push everything. It kind of just like messes it up a little bit, or humanizes. It looks like it's humanizing the snare. So if I change the 16th note on this and then change that, yeah, it's the same one. So this is pretty much only manipulating the snare in the 3rd hit and keeping everything on the 1 exactly where it is. But even still, you can go in and pull the MIDI out from this if you wanted to, just like that. And it's very easy, again, to kind of come up with that same stuff if you're doing breaks, or there's a billion breaks in here that you can manipulate. But, you know, it's there. It's just not necessarily my favorite. Superior Drummer, on the other hand, is, again, on steroids. With the idea of grooves, you've got all these different grooves that you have that you can like choose from. And if you take one of those and drag those down here, like this thing gets crazy. And this would be a whole dedicated video itself, but just know that you can mess with the grid editor here and change the velocity. You can kind of nudge the timing of some of these, kind of like so, or snap it, I guess. And I think that you can turn this off, I want to say. Let's just go into triplets and see if we can adjust it that way. Yeah, so you can get a little bit ahead, and that way you can add swing, you can randomize it, and you can try to force quantize it or something, turn snapping off, there you go. And so everything is a lot easier to manipulate, at least as far as a groove thing, but why would you use this if you're already in a DAW? Which comes to my next point, all of these can be used, Addictive Drums, Superior Drummer, EXO, not kick 2. Yo, someone followed while I was recording. And phase plant can all be used in standalone, so you don't actually have to use the DAW. So yeah, there's a ton of different options that you have within making drums and whatnot, and really, like, if you decide to buy one or the other, don't regret, you know, purchasing one. It's just a matter of understanding, like, here's some tools that you can use, and at the end of the day, it's really about the processing. If you want to get good drums, these are all different aesthetics, of course, but as far as making usable things or like usable sounds, I'm telling you guys, just clip it, compress it, limit if you have to, and you guys will be good to go. So yeah, I have a masterclass coming out later today, which is how to create percussion out of any sample. And if you guys are interested in that, then I would invite you all to join the Arcanum memberships. And I actually posted all of these beats here and samples for the Ether members in my Discord, just because I love you guys. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you guys have any questions regarding drum processing or anything. And I think XO is an amazing tool. It's something that has given me a unique approach, especially in matters of randomization and very fluid randomization towards how I make beats today. Thank you guys. I'll see you in the next one.